"You're no longer my bank, get out." My mom yelled as I sat frozen at the dinner table. I couldn't believe it. The woman who had raised me, who had always been my protector and provider, just kicked me out. And not in the way you might think. No, this wasn't the typical go-to-your-room kind of outburst. This was the final straw. The point where everything I had ever known, my safety, my security, my place in the world, was ripped away in a single loud statement. A statement that would change my life forever. It was supposed to be a regular dinner, the last family meal before I moved out, but it turned into something I never expected. My mom, Mary, had always been the type to hold on to control. Not just control of the household but control of every aspect of my life. I had always felt like a little girl under her thumb, even though I was 25. Growing up I had been told where to go, what to do, how much money I could spend, and even how I should feel. Money was the thing she had always used to keep me close. She was my lifeline and I had accepted that. But tonight was supposed to be different. I had decided it was time to stand up for myself. I had been planning for months, saving money, finding a job that would support me, and getting everything ready to leave the nest. The plan was simple. I would move out, start living independently, and finally take control of my own life. I wanted to prove to myself that I could do it. But Mary? She had other ideas. As I sat at the table, a quiet tension built up between us. She could sense something was off and she wasn't happy about it. As the meal went on, the conversation turned to my departure, and that's when things went south. I had been carefully preparing myself for this moment, rehearsing my speech in my head, trying to explain why I needed to leave. I wanted her to understand, but instead she just sat there, her face growing redder with every word I spoke. "So you really think you can just leave, huh?" she asked, her voice shaking with frustration. "You really think you're ready for this world?" I nodded, trying to hold my ground. "Yes, Mom. I'm ready. I've been saving up. I have a job lined up. I can do this." She scoffed. "Saving up? For what? To throw away everything I've given you? To leave me here with nothing? You're not my little girl anymore. You don't get to walk out like that." And then it happened. The words I had been dreading but somehow knew would come. "Not your bank anymore, get out." The anger in her voice was like a slap in the face. My heart sank. I hadn't expected this. I thought she'd be upset, yes, but not like this. The woman I had always looked up to, the woman who had been my rock, was now telling me to leave. For good. I sat there unable to move. My mind was racing but my body was frozen. This wasn't just about leaving the house anymore. It was about leaving everything behind. All the years of dependency, all the comfort and all the love, or so I thought. It was all gone in that instant. I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to leave. Not like this. But I also knew that I had to. For my own sake. So I stood up slowly, the weight of the moment sinking in. "I'm sorry, Mom. But I have to go," I whispered. And with that I walked out the door. I didn't know where I was going, or what I would do next. All I knew was that I was stepping into the unknown. And in that moment I felt free. But I also felt empty. My world had just shattered. And as the door closed behind me, I couldn't help but wonder if I would ever be able to put it all back together. The cool night air hit my face as I stepped out of the house, my heart still pounding in my chest. I didn't know where to go or what to do, but I knew I couldn't stay there anymore. The door slammed behind me, and with it, the comfort I had known for my whole life. It was over. I was free but also utterly lost. The streets were quiet, empty, as if the world had just stopped to watch me stumble through this moment. I walked aimlessly, not sure if I was looking for something or if I was just trying to escape the feeling of being thrown out, rejected. The weight of the night seemed to press down on me. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I hesitated for a moment before checking it. It was a message from my best friend, Emma. *, are you okay? I know it's happening tonight. I'm here if you need me. *, I didn't reply right away. What could I say? How could I explain what had just happened? I wasn't even sure I fully understood it myself. After a few more minutes of walking, I decided I needed to figure out where to go. Called Emma back. "Hey," I said, my voice shaky. I left. She told me to leave. She kicked me out. There was a pause on the other end before Emma spoke, her tone filled with concern. "Oh my God, Saf, I'm so sorry. Where are you? Do you want me to come get you?" I looked around, realizing how far I had wandered. I had no idea where I was. It was like I had walked into a completely different world. One where I wasn't someone's daughter, someone's dependent. I was just a person, a young woman, alone in the world for the first time. I don't even know where I am. I whispered, feeling embarrassed. I'm scared, Emma. Emma's voice softened, and I could hear her moving around in the background, likely grabbing her car keys. Listen, I'm on my way. Just stay where you are, okay? I'll come pick you up. I told her where I was, and then I hung up the phone, still unable to process everything that had just happened. I didn't know how I felt. Anger? Betrayal? Freedom? I felt all of those things, but they didn't make sense together. I kept walking, hoping the movement would help me sort through the chaos in my mind. As I wandered, my thoughts kept returning to my mom, Mary, the woman who had always been there for me. The woman who had shaped my life in so many ways. She had always been so controlling, but I never thought she would go this far. Kicking me out, telling me I was no longer her responsibility. It was like she had completely erased me from her life. My hands tightened into fists at my sides, the anger beginning to build up. But at the same time, a small voice in the back of my mind kept telling me that maybe this was what I needed. Maybe this was the push I had been waiting for. For years I had been stuck, trying to please her, trying to fit into a mold that wasn't mine. I had done what she expected, always trying to live up to her standards. But deep down, I knew I wasn't living my life for myself. It had been her life, her plans, her decisions all along. And now I was free. But was I really ready for this? A part of me didn't feel ready at all. I still couldn't shake the feeling that I was making a mistake. I wanted to turn around, go back to the house, and beg her to let me stay. But I knew I couldn't. Not anymore. I had to do this even if it terrified me. I had to prove that I could stand on my own 2 feet, that I could live my own life. I had spent years depending on my mom, and now I had to figure out who I really was without her. Just then I saw headlights in the distance and I knew it was Emma. She pulled up next to me, her car screeching to a stop as I quickly climbed in. Hey, Emma said, her face full of sympathy. You okay? I nodded, trying to hold back the tears that had been threatening to fall all night. I think so, I said quietly. I don't know. I'm scared, Em. I don't know what to do next. Emma didn't say anything for a moment. She just put the car in drive and began to head toward her apartment. You don't have to have everything figured out right now, Soph, she said finally. You're not alone. I'm here. And we'll figure it out together. I closed my eyes, leaning back in the seat, feeling the tears finally begin to fall. It wasn't going to be easy. I didn't know where I was going, but for the first time I knew I had to start this journey. I had no choice but to keep moving forward. And somehow that felt like the first step toward taking control of my own life. The next few days felt like a blur. I stayed at Emma's apartment, sleeping on her couch and trying to piece together what had just happened. The world felt different, like I was looking at everything through a foggy window. I had expected to feel relief, but all I felt was this constant weight pressing down on me. I still couldn't believe it. My mom had kicked me out, and now I was left to figure out how to survive on my own. The worst part was that I didn't know where to start. I had never really been independent before. Sure, I had worked a few part-time jobs over the years, but I had always been supported by my mom. Everything I knew about living on my own felt like it was a million miles away from what I was facing now. I had to get a job, find a place to live, pay bills, do everything myself. There was no safety net anymore. I felt scared, and worse, I felt like a failure. Emma tried to keep my spirits up, but even she could tell how much this was affecting me. You're going to figure it out, she kept telling me. It's going to be okay. You're strong, sophomore. You've got this. I wanted to believe her, but deep down I wasn't so sure. I had spent my whole life relying on my mom, and now I had to take the leap on my own. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of my phone buzzing. It was a message from my mom. I didn't want to look at it, but I knew I had to. Sophie, I hope you understand what you've done. You've made a huge mistake. I don't know how you can think you're ready for the real world. I've given you everything, and this is how you repay me. I stared at the message, my chest tightening. Part of me wanted to call her, to apologize, to beg her to let me come back. But I knew I couldn't. That part of my life was over. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I had made my decision and I had to stick with it. I couldn't go back. I glanced around Emma's apartment, the reality of my situation hitting me once again. The couch I was sleeping on wasn't much, but it was a roof over my head. Couldn't stay there forever, though. I needed to find a place of my own. The problem was I had no idea where to even begin. I had no credit, no rental history, and I didn't make enough money to afford a decent apartment in the city. I had been planning on staying with Emma for a few weeks while I figured things out, but the reality was sinking in. I needed to act fast. I couldn't just stay in limbo forever. That afternoon I started doing what I had been avoiding. I searched for apartments online, making note of anything that seemed remotely affordable. But nothing felt right. Every place I looked at seemed out of my reach. The rent was too high or the location was too far from work. My heart sank with each listing I clicked on. How was I supposed to do this on my own? As the days went by, I fell into a routine of waking up early, sending out resumes and checking rental listings. But I was starting to lose hope. Every rejection from potential employers made me feel like I was failing again. My savings were running low, and I was starting to wonder if I'd have to move back home. I hated the thought of it. Felt like giving up. Emma was supportive, always there to listen when I needed to vent, but I could see the worry in her eyes. "You're doing great," she kept saying, but I could tell she was frustrated for me. I could feel the weight of everything pressing down harder. And then, just when I thought I couldn't handle it anymore, something unexpected happened. I got a call from a temp agency. They had a position available at a local marketing firm. It wasn't exactly what I had wanted, but it was a start. I took the interview on a whim, not really thinking I had much to lose. When I walked into the office I was nervous, but I told myself this was my chance. I had to nail it. The interview went better than I expected. They seemed impressed by my experience even if it wasn't extensive. A few days later I got the call. I had the job. It wasn't glamorous, but it was something. And for the first time in a while I felt a small glimmer of hope. Still didn't have a place to live, but the job gave me a sense of direction. I wasn't entirely on my own yet, but I was getting there. I knew it wasn't going to be easy. I still had a long way to go, but at least I had taken the first step. I wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time in days I felt like I might be able to do this. I wasn't going to give up. I had to keep pushing forward no matter how hard it was. It was my life and I had to take control of it. And as the sun set on another long day, I realized that I was starting to build something for myself. Slowly but surely I was moving forward. I woke up the next morning feeling like a stranger in my own life. The night before had been one of the hardest moments I'd ever experienced, but somehow I had made it through. It wasn't just about moving out anymore. It was about facing the fact that everything I had known was now behind me. The comfort of home, the familiarity of my mom's presence, the safety net I had relied on, it was all gone. And now it was up to me to figure out what came next. I took a deep breath and rolled out of bed. The couch I was sleeping on at Emma's place wasn't the most comfortable, but it was something. It wasn't much, but it was a roof over my head. I had told myself that this would only be temporary, just until I got back on my feet. The temporary part was starting to feel a lot longer than I'd expected. I didn't want to overstay my welcome, but I wasn't sure where else to go. I didn't have the money for my own place yet, and every time I checked my bank account, it felt like the numbers were dwindling faster than I could replenish them. Emma had been kind enough to let me crash on her couch, but I didn't want to burden her for too long. She was my best friend, not my savior. I had to stand on my own even if I wasn't sure how. That morning I sent a text to my mom. I didn't know what I expected to happen, but I figured I had to try. Mom, I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you. Can we talk? The text was out of character for me. I had never been the type to reach out when things went wrong, but it felt like the right thing to do. I didn't expect an immediate response, and I wasn't sure if I even wanted one. A part of me wanted to hear her say that everything was okay, that I could come home, that I hadn't ruined everything. But another part of me knew that wasn't going to happen. And deep down I didn't think I wanted it to. I couldn't go back. I wasn't ready to make that choice yet. The day stretched on and I found myself back at the computer, scrolling through job listings. I had sent out what felt like 1,000 resumes, but nothing was clicking. I started applying for jobs I wasn't entirely qualified for, hoping that anyone would give me a chance. I had to make this work. I couldn't let myself fail. Around noon my phone buzzed again. It was from my mom. I hesitated before opening the message. I'm done, Sophie. You've made your choice and I've made mine. Don't bother coming back. The word stung more than I expected. I had known on some level that this was coming, but seeing it in black and white felt like a punch in the gut. I sat back staring at the message for what felt like an eternity. There was no going back from this. This wasn't just a disagreement. This was a complete break. I blinked back the tears that were threatening to fall, taking a deep breath to steady myself. I couldn't let this define me. I had already made the hardest decision of my life by walking away. Now I had to make it count. I texted Emma to let her know what had happened. She called me immediately. I'm so sorry, Soph, she said softly. You don't deserve this. I nodded even though she couldn't see me. I know, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. But I have to keep going. I can't turn back now. Emma was quiet for a moment, then she said, You're stronger than you think, you know. You've got this. We'll figure it out. Her words were like a lifeline. I didn't feel strong, but I was trying to convince myself that I could be. It was hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel when everything felt so dark. But Emma was right. I had to keep going. I couldn't just give up now. Later that afternoon, I received an email with the job interview invitation. It wasn't the marketing position I had wanted, but it was something. It was for an office assistant role at a local law firm. The pay wasn't great, but it was a start. I immediately emailed back to schedule the interview. It was a small win, but it was a win nonetheless. That night, as I lay on the couch in Emma's apartment, I realized something. The road ahead wasn't going to be easy. There would be days when I felt like giving up, when I wanted to crawl back into the safety of my old life. But I couldn't do that anymore. I had taken the first step. I had left behind everything I had known, and now I had to build something new. I had no idea what the future held, but I knew that I couldn't stop moving forward. I couldn't let fear dictate my life. And for the first time in a long time, I felt a small spark of hope. It wasn't much, but it was there. And maybe that was all I needed to keep going. The interview was scheduled for the next day, and I barely slept the night before. I kept tossing and turning, my mind running a million miles a minute. This was my shot. This was the opportunity one needed to prove to myself that I wasn't just a failure, that I could stand on my own. I had no backup plan, no safety net, just this one chance. The morning was gray and cold, the kind of weather that matched the feeling in my chest. I didn't have a lot of nice clothes to wear, but I found something presentable enough. A button-up shirt and some black slacks that had been sitting in my closet for years. They didn't fit perfectly, but they do. I spent an extra few minutes fixing my hair, trying to look as put together as possible. I didn't feel put together, not by any stretch of the imagination. I felt like a mess, but I couldn't let that show. As I walked to the bus stop, I couldn't help but replay the words my mom had sent me. The text that said I was no longer her responsibility, that I had made my choice and she had made hers. It stung every time I thought about it. I wanted to call her, to make her understand why I had to leave, but I knew it wouldn't change anything. I had burned that bridge. The bus ride to the office was long, the silence between the stops only adding to the pressure in my chest. I barely noticed the passing scenery. My mind was fixed on what lay ahead. The law firm was located in the heart of the city, a sleek glass building that looked far more professional than I felt walking up to it. I had never really been in a corporate setting before. The thought of walking into this pristine high-end office felt like I was stepping into a world that wasn't mine. But I pushed the fear down. I had to do this. I walked through the automatic doors and immediately, a sense of awe washed over me. Everything was shiny and spotless. The reception desk gleamed, and the air smelled faintly of freshly brewed coffee. I took a deep breath and approached the desk. Hi. I have an interview with Mr. Thompson. I'm Sophie Anderson, I said, trying to sound confident. The receptionist smiled at me and told me to have a seat. I sank into one of the chairs, my heart hammering in my chest. I tried to calm my nerves, reminding myself that this was just an interview. But it felt like so much more than that. It felt like my entire future was hanging in the balance. A few minutes later, A tall man in a dark suit walked over and extended his hand. "Sophie Anderson?" he asked. "Yes, that's me," I replied, standing up and shaking his hand. "It's nice to meet you, Mr. Thompson." He smiled, his grip firm but not overpowering. "Please call me John. Let's head into my office." I followed him down a hallway lined with framed awards and certificates. Each step felt like it brought me closer to either my salvation or my downfall. I sat down across from him at a sleek wooden desk, the kind you'd see in movies. He gestured for me to make myself comfortable. "So Sophie, tell me a little about yourself," John said, leaning back in his chair. I had rehearsed this part a million times, but now that I was here, I felt like my brain had completely shut down. I took a deep breath and started. "Well, I've been looking for full-time work for a while now. I've had a few part-time jobs over the years, but I'm really looking for something stable, something that will allow me to grow. I've done a lot of administrative work in the past, and I'm really good at organizing and handling multiple tasks at once." John nodded, listening attentively. "And why are you interested in working here?" I swallowed hard. "I've always admired your firm's reputation. I believe I could learn a lot here, and I'm really eager to take on new challenges. I'm ready to prove myself, and I'm excited about the possibility of being part of such a well-established team." He raised an eyebrow, clearly impressed. "That's a good answer. And tell me, Sophie, how do you handle pressure?" I paused for a moment, thinking about the past few weeks. Everything had been pressure. My mom kicking me out, the fear of failing, the uncertainty of my future. "I've been under a lot of pressure recently," I said, the words coming more easily than I thought they would. "But I've learned how to stay calm and focused. I prioritize what needs to be done, and I take things one step at a time." He smiled again. "That's exactly the mindset we need around here." The conversation continued, and for the first time in days, I felt like I could breathe again. John was easy to talk to, and as the interview went on, I began to feel a little more confident. I wasn't just faking it. I was starting to believe in myself. The interview wrapped up after about 30 minutes, and John stood up, offering me his hand again. "We'll be in touch soon, Sophie," he said. "Thank you for coming in today." "Thank you for the opportunity," I replied, shaking his hand firmly. As I walked out of the building, I felt like I had just survived something huge. I didn't know if I had the job yet, but the simple fact that I had gotten through the interview without collapsing in on myself felt like a victory. I had faced my fear, and I hadn't run away. I had stayed. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was starting to get my footing. Maybe, just maybe, I was going to be okay. I didn't hear back from the law firm for almost a week, and in that time my anxiety only grew. Each day I checked my phone, hoping for an email or a call, but nothing came. It felt like everything I had worked so hard for, the interview, the effort, the courage to step into the unknown, was slipping away. Emma could see the change in me. I was no longer the girl with a spark of hope in her eyes. I was someone who had become weighed down by the waiting, by the uncertainty. "You're going to get the job, Sophie. I know it," she kept saying, but even her optimism started to feel hollow to me. Deep down, I feared she was just trying to make me feel better. And then, on the 7th day, it came. An email notification popped up on my phone as I was walking to the bus stop. The words "offer of employment" staring back at me. My heart skipped a beat as I tapped the screen to open it. I barely skimmed the rest of the message. Asterisk. "We are pleased to offer you the position of office assistant. Your start date is Monday." Asterisk. I stopped reading and immediately called Emma. "Emma, it's real. They offered me the job." My voice cracked as I said it, the weight of the moment finally hitting me. Emma's voice on the other end was full of excitement. "Oh my God, Sophie. I knew it. You've earned this." I smiled, feeling a rush of relief flood through me. It was happening. This was real. I had a job that would help me take control of my life again. I spent the rest of the day in a daze trying to process the news. The weight on my shoulders had lifted, but there was still so much to figure out. The job wasn't exactly glamorous, but it was a start. It was a step in the right direction. And for the first time in weeks, I felt like maybe I was going to be okay. I celebrated the news quietly that night, just me and Emma. She cooked us dinner, a simple pasta dish, and we ate while talking about the future. "You're really doing it, Sophie," Emma said, her voice full of pride. You've come so far in such a short amount of time. I know, I replied, feeling the truth of her words sink in. But I still don't have a place to live. Emma paused for a moment then smiled. Well, you've got time now. And you've got me. We'll figure it out. I smiled back at her, grateful for her support. The next few days were a blur of preparation. I signed the contract for the job, figuring out when to start, making arrangements for transportation. But the biggest hurdle was still finding a place to live. Emma's apartment wasn't an option long term, and I knew that I needed to get my own space. I scoured rental listings, making phone calls, trying to schedule viewings. But each time the rent seemed just out of reach or the apartments were too far from work. The more I searched, the more I realized how little I had. My savings weren't enough to cover a deposit, and I couldn't afford first and last month's rent. Felt like I was stuck. I was so close to achieving independence, but I was still being held back by the financial reality of it all. One evening, after another long day of searching, I collapsed on the couch in frustration. Emma sat down beside me, sensing how defeated I felt. You're not giving up, are you? She asked, her tone gentle but firm. No, I replied, my voice small. But I'm so close. I just need a break. Emma put a hand on my shoulder. You will get your break, Sophie. You have to believe that. And in that moment I realized something. I had been so focused on the obstacles in front of me that I hadn't allowed myself to see how far I had come. I had a job. I was independent. Yes, things were tough right now, but I was stronger than I had been a month ago. I had survived the hardest part. I had taken the first step. The next day, something unexpected happened. I was walking to the bus when I bumped into a woman I had met a few months ago at a friend's party. Her name was Claire, and she was in the process of moving out of her apartment. She mentioned that her place was available for rent, and after a quick conversation, I found out that the rent was affordable and the location was perfect. She was looking for someone to take over the lease, and just like that, I had a place to live. It wasn't perfect, but it was exactly what I needed. The rent was manageable, and it was close to both work and Emma's place. I couldn't believe my luck. Everything had fallen into place, just when I had been ready to give up. The next few days were a whirlwind of packing and moving in. The apartment was small, but it felt like a palace compared to the couch I had been sleeping on. I had my own space, my own room, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was finally starting to get my life together. My first day at the law firm came quicker than I expected. I put on my best outfit, the one that still felt a little too big for me, and made my way to the office. As I walked through the doors, I realized that this was the start of something new. I wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time in months, I felt ready to face it. I wasn't going to let anything stop me now. I had my job. I had my place. I had my independence. And no matter what came next, I was ready to fight for it. I had been in my new apartment for a week now, and although it wasn't much, it felt like a huge accomplishment. I had a roof over my head, my job was going well, and for the first time in a long time I could breathe. But there was still this weight hanging over me. My mom. The break between us hadn't healed, not by a long shot. I hadn't heard from her since that final message, and while a part of me wanted to reach out, I knew I couldn't. I had to keep going forward no matter how difficult it was. At work I was slowly getting the hang of things. I had started as the office assistant at the law firm, and while it wasn't exactly exciting, it was stable. The tasks were mostly mundane: filing, answering phones, making copies, but I took pride in doing them well. Every day I tried to prove to myself that I was capable of handling more, that I was more than just someone who had been dependent on others. Slowly I gained the respect of the team. My boss, John Thompson, was tough but fair, and he started to give me more responsibilities. Felt good. It felt like I was finally becoming a part of something bigger than myself. But there were still challenges. I was working long hours, and sometimes by the time I got home, I was too exhausted to do anything but crash on the couch. I couldn't help but feel overwhelmed. The job was demanding, the apartment was small, and I still hadn't completely adjusted to living on my own. I missed the sense of security I once had, the comfort of knowing my mom was just a phone call away. But at the same time I knew I couldn't go back. I had to keep moving forward. I had to keep proving to myself that I could do this. Then one evening, after a long day at the office, I found myself scrolling through my phone, thinking about everything that had happened. I saw a message from Emma. Asterisk. Hey, are you free this weekend? Let's grab dinner and catch up. Asterisk. I smiled at the message. Emma had been my rock during all of this. She had listened to my frustrations, calmed my fears, and kept me grounded when I thought everything was falling apart. I quickly texted her back. Asterisk. I'd love that. Saturday night. Asterisk. We made plans to meet at a little restaurant downtown, the kind of place that felt cozy and familiar. As Saturday approached, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. I had started to build my new life, but it didn't feel complete. I had gotten the job, the apartment, and the independence I had longed for. But I was still carrying the weight of my fractured relationship with my mom. It was like I was living two lives. One was the person I was becoming, someone who was strong, independent, and capable. But the other was the person I used to be, someone who had relied on her mother for everything and who was now lost without her. I didn't know how to reconcile those two sides of myself. On the night I was meeting Emma, I found myself standing in front of the mirror, adjusting my outfit. I hadn't seen her in weeks and I was nervous. It wasn't about the dinner, but more about how much had changed in such a short time. I had changed. I had grown. And I wasn't sure if I was ready to face that. When I arrived at the restaurant, Emma was already there, sitting at a corner booth, a smile on her face when she saw me. Hey you! She greeted me warmly. I smiled, feeling a little lighter just being around her. Hey Em, I said, sliding into the seat across from her. How's everything going? Emma raised an eyebrow, clearly sensing that I wasn't quite myself. How are you doing? She asked, her voice soft but probing. I hesitated for a moment. I'm doing okay, I said, trying to sound casual. Just a lot on my plate, you know? She nodded, her expression thoughtful. I can imagine. But you're doing great, sophomore. You've come so far. I mean, look at you. You're working, you've got your own place. She trailed off, and for a moment I just looked at her. I don't know, Emma, I said, my voice quieter now. I feel like I'm still not there yet. Like I've made progress, but there's still this emptiness. I feel like I'm constantly trying to fill a space that's just too big. You know? Emma reached across the table and took my hand. I get it, sophomore. But you are there. You're stronger than you think. And yeah, you've had to face a lot, but you're doing it. You're living your life, and that's all you can do. I smiled at her, but it felt bittersweet. Thanks, Em. It just feels like there's so much left to figure out. You'll get there. We'll figure it out together. And for the first time in weeks, I believed her. That night, as we ate and talked about everything and nothing, I started to realize something important. I had come so far and I had done it on my own. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living. It wasn't perfect, and there were still so many unanswered questions, but I was stronger than I had ever been. I wasn't ready to call it quits. I was ready to face whatever came next. And maybe, just maybe, I was starting to heal, not just from what had happened with my mom, but from the person I used to be. I didn't have all the answers, but I was learning to live without needing them right away. I was learning to trust myself, and that was more than enough. I had been living on my own for a little over a month now, and things were starting to settle into a routine. I had my job at the law firm, I had my small but cozy apartment, and I was slowly getting the hang of this adulting thing. But the underlying tension that had been building for weeks never really went away. My mom's absence, the void in our relationship, was still there, hanging over everything. I thought about her every day, but I had stopped reaching out. I knew that if I wanted to move forward, I had to stop looking back. It wasn't easy. There were moments when the loneliness crept in, when I missed the days when things were simpler, when I wasn't carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders. But those moments were becoming less frequent. I was getting used to my new life, even if it wasn't perfect. I woke up early every morning, got dressed for work, and went about my day. The work was steady, sometimes boring, but it gave me a sense of purpose. I was contributing, I was learning, and most importantly, I was proving to myself that I could stand on my own 2 feet. At night, I came home to my apartment, unpacked the groceries I'd bought, and cooked simple meals for myself. Nothing extravagant, but it felt good to know that I could take care of myself. It wasn't the life I had envisioned a few months ago, but it was mine. The hardest part was still dealing with the emotional fallout from the fallout with my mom. It was like I had this invisible scar that I couldn't get rid of. Some days it felt like a constant reminder of my failure to live up to expectations. Other days I felt like I had done the right thing, but the guilt never fully went away. It had been a while since I last heard from her. I didn't expect her to reach out, but I still couldn't stop thinking about what she might be doing. Part of me wanted to fix things, to go back to the way things were. But I knew I couldn't. I had made my choice, and even if it hurt, I couldn't go back to that old life. I was slowly coming to terms with the fact that sometimes, you have to walk away from the people you love in order to save yourself. One weekend, as I sat on my couch, flipping through some magazines, my phone buzzed on the coffee table. It was a message from my mom. My heart skipped a beat as I picked it up. Asterisk Sophie, I've been thinking about everything. I want to talk. Can we meet? Asterisk I stared at the message for a long time. The words sinking in. It wasn't much, but it was a start. A small crack in the wall that had been built between us. I took a deep breath, not knowing what to think. I wanted to see her. I missed her, but I didn't know if I was ready for that conversation. After a few minutes I typed back. Asterisk okay. Let's meet. Where and when? Asterisk a few minutes later, she replied with a time and place. A small cafe downtown. I felt a lump form in my throat. I had no idea what this meeting would be like. Would we fight? Would we reconcile? Could we even find common ground after everything that had happened? I didn't know, but I knew I had to go. When the day came, I took extra care in picking out my clothes, trying to look presentable but not too formal. I wasn't sure what I was walking into, but I wanted to feel like myself. I made my way to the cafe, my nerves building with each step. The place was quiet, cozy, with soft lighting and the hum of quiet conversations in the background. I spotted my mom sitting by the window, her hands wrapped around a cup of coffee. She looked tired, worn down, but there was a softness in her eyes when she saw me. I walked over and sat down across from her. Neither of us said anything for a moment. I didn't know what to say, and I didn't think she did either. Finally she spoke. I've been thinking a lot, Sophie, about what happened, about everything. Her voice was quiet, almost tentative. I nodded, unsure of how to respond. I know I pushed you away, she continued. I didn't want to, but I thought if I let you go, I'd lose you. I thought if I kept you close, I could protect you. But I see now that I was suffocating you. I swallowed hard, feeling a lump in my throat. I had always felt that way, that she was suffocating me, but hearing her admit it felt like a weight was lifting. I'm sorry, she said, her voice breaking slightly. I never meant to hurt you. I didn't know how to respond at first. For so long I had been angry at her. Angry that she had controlled so much of my life. But now, hearing her vulnerability, hearing her own regret, I realized that maybe I wasn't the only one who had suffered. I've been angry too, I finally said, my voice soft. But I think we both needed this. I needed to find my own way. And you needed to let go. She nodded, looking down at her coffee cup. I understand. I know you're angry with me. I can't change the past, but I want to try to make things right. I reached across the table and took her hand. I'm not angry anymore. I just needed space. I needed to prove to myself that I could do this. But I don't want to lose you, Mom. For the first time in a long time, I felt like we were starting to rebuild something. It wasn't perfect and it wouldn't happen overnight, but it was a start. And that was enough for me. As we sat there talking about everything and nothing, I realized that sometimes healing takes time. But the most important thing was that we were finally talking. That was more than I had expected. And as I left the cafe later that afternoon, I felt like I was taking another step forward. One step closer to the life I was building, one step closer to forgiving both her and myself. I had never realized how much power a single conversation could have, until I sat down with my mom that afternoon. It was like a door had cracked open, and for the first time in what felt like forever, there was light. We didn't fix everything in that moment, not by a long shot. But it felt like a fresh start, like we were finally moving toward healing. I left the cafe with a sense of peace I hadn't had in weeks. The weight in my chest had lightened, but I knew the road ahead would still be difficult. There were years of miscommunication, of frustration to work through. But for the first time I believed we could get there. My life had changed so much in the past few months. I was no longer that young woman clinging to her mom for financial support, unsure of who I was or what I wanted. I had my own job, my own apartment, and I was standing on my own 2 feet. But even though I had gained so much independence, There were still moments when I missed the comfort of my old life. I missed knowing my mom was always there, even if she was overbearing at times. I missed the certainty of it. But I also knew that if I went back to that life, I'd lose the person I was becoming. I couldn't go back. I had to keep moving forward. That week I focused on my work, diving into tasks at the law firm with renewed energy. John, my boss, had been supportive throughout everything, and he had even given me a bit more responsibility, trusting me with handling some of the office's more complex administrative tasks. I was still learning, but the progress I was making felt significant. At night, I came home to my apartment, unpacked groceries, and spent time getting to know the space I had made for myself. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I took care of it, kept it clean, and made it a place I could relax. Slowly, I started to enjoy the quiet of living alone. I spent weekends exploring the city, taking long walks, finding little cafes, and getting lost in books. I had the freedom I had always wanted, but it wasn't without its challenges. There were days when I missed my mom terribly, days when I longed for the days when I could just rely on her. But I was learning how to be okay with being alone. It wasn't loneliness anymore, it was solitude. One evening as I was putting away groceries, my phone buzzed with a text. It was from my mom. I miss you, Sophie. Can we talk again soon? My heart skipped a beat. I stared at the message for a while before typing back. I miss you too. How about next weekend? A few moments later she responded. It's a date. I couldn't believe it. It was only the second time we'd communicated in weeks, but something in her message made me feel like we were both finally ready to take the next step. We hadn't figured everything out, but we were getting there. That weekend we met again at the same cafe. This time there were no long silences, no awkwardness. We talked like we used to about everything and nothing. It was easy. And in that moment I realized that things didn't have to be perfect. There wasn't a magical fix to our relationship. But we were working on it, and that was enough. We agreed to take things slow, to keep talking, and to keep rebuilding. It wasn't about forgetting what had happened. It was about moving forward step by step, with honesty and understanding. As I walked back to my apartment that evening, I felt like a weight had truly been lifted. I didn't know what the future held, but I was no longer afraid of it. I was no longer afraid of what I had left behind. I had learned how to be independent, how to live on my own terms. And I was learning how to heal. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. And progress was all I needed.